Greetings and welcome to Learning from TEDx speakers Gary Barnes. Hosted by Director of Operations Glenn Daniels. Gary Barnes is the Breakthrough Business Mastery Coach, a high-performance business and sales strategist, popular national and international speaker, with over 1,000 talks and award-winning #1 international Amazon best-selling author. Gary's clients have spanned over 8 countries, and he has been published by many outlets including the Boston Globe, The Daily News, Miami Herald, CBS Money Watch, Morning Star, and Worth Magazine. He has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, PBS, and TEDx. Gary Barnes International has created several companies personally selling over $280 million in products and services. He produces 2 business-building boot camps a year. He also understands dealing with adversity. In 1988, Gary was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and was told that he would be in a wheelchair or dead within 10 years. Now this is someone that we can learn from. Let us get started.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Gary. How are you doing? Uh-oh. No mic. Let's see what happened here. It says we're rolling in broadcast. Gary, mic yet? No mic yet. Mute. All righty, no mic. That's interesting because it is on. You say something, Gary.
I have no sound.
Okay, and I hear you. You don't hear me. That's not good. So let me adjust something. Hold on. But you heard me in our pre-talk. Okay, checking. Interesting. No sound. Okay, how about sound?
Can you hear me?
Well, do you have no sound? It says we have sound.
Can you hear me?
Let's go check camera. We're going to start over, of course. But camera, audio. Okay. That's microphone shows working on this end. Okay. All right. Gary, stand by. Okay.
Oh, there you are.
That's strange because you popped in and popped out yourself. You still have me now?
I do.
Okay. Well, we got a little bit of editing to do, which I tell you we don't edit. Once we hit the start button, we start. But we'll edit a tiny little bit of that out.
No worries.
What I'll say again is good morning. Hi, good afternoon. It's morning for us, I guess, but it could be afternoon, evening for everybody else. I have to thank you very much for taking the time. You're so skilled and so talented. I know you're so busy and everything that you got going on. So I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do this. Well,
you're very welcome. It's always an honor. You know, it's one of those things that I talk about the power of yes. And when you reached out, you know, I follow the nudge and appreciate the opportunity.
I like what you said there. Follow the nudge and create the opportunity. That's one of my mentors used to preach that all the time. Say yes as much as you can if the nudge is there.
Right.
If the nudge is there. If the nudge is there. Here's my first question to you. And this is kind of an interesting question, I think. What is unique, powerful, and a need to know about you, your organization, or your TEDx? What's unique, powerful out there?
You know, I would say what we just touched on is the power of yes. I grew up with a family structure that it was always no. And so it was always a matter of overcoming or not being good enough. And I remember back when I was in college, I had never been around animals really, but I loved horses. And I went down, volunteered to be one of the uh, here I am not being around animals, but I became one of the trainers for the horsemanship program
Hmm.
and fell in love with a 17.5 foot uh, cutting horse from the Cow Palace. And I would ride him bareback and jump. And, it was really taught me that, if you want something is to be able to ask for it. I remember the book from Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen that many people don't know about. It's called The Aladdin Factor. And the
Yes.
whole
Oh,
premise of
excellent
the
book.
book is ASK to GET. But for today, it's really about having a voice, saying, hi, I am. It's not about your ego, but it's about sharing and being ready to serve others in the process as well.
Before I go on, because that book, The Aladdin Factory, that was a wonderful book. A wonderful
Oh,
book. And I think we forget about ask to get. Okay. And that's what we're basically saying. When you were building this journey, how did it go? You asked for it, or did you ask for it? Or did it just roll into your life and you got it?
yeah, no, it wasn't easy train. It wasn't swallow the, whatever color pill and everything became clear. And it was a matter of adjustments. There's one of my Garyisms that I called launch and adjust. And it's really taking the best course of action in whatever the situation is that you find yourself. But if we didn't make the mistakes, we wouldn't have the positive results. John Maxwell talks about that, fail faster and fail forward. And the idea of success is also finding out what doesn't work. One of my very first events that I produced was back in the 70s. And back
Mm.
then, I actually lost $30,000 because nobody came. And somebody you probably remember, Dennis Whaley, was going to be one of my keynote speakers.
Yes, yes.
And in today's money, that's over $90,000. And my wife did not divorce me, which
No, that's a win.
that's a win. And but if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be doing many of the things that I do today because I wouldn't have had the ability to know what to do or what not to do. And sometimes that's more important than knowing what to do is going back and saying, okay, let's not do that again because it didn't give me the results that I want.
So along the way, you said that this was kind of not a magical pill that you swallowed. You had some setbacks, and there were some issues that took place there. I think people might want to hear about those setbacks because we all have them on occasion. As you're putting together your TED Talk.
When we look at setbacks, I look at a general, category. It's called adversity. And what is it that we have as bumps in the road that we were not expecting? It could be an illness, it could be financial, it could be relationship, it could be simply like what most of, or actually the whole world dealt with the pandemic. There's things that we don't foresee, but we have to adjust to. And it's really our decision around that because the reality is we always have a choice. Even though the choices may not be the ones that we're really looking for or desire, we always have a choice. And when we really empower ourselves with that, we're able to adjust in a way that will give us a predictable result. It won't give us a guarantee, but it'll give us a predictable result that will allow us to go through the timeline. And, again, with relationship to the pandemic, the businesses and the individuals that did not allow it to stop them, we had to slow down, we had to change, I don't like the word pivot. I played football. I was not a good basketball player, so pivoting was not my thing. But those that didn't allow it to totally immobilize are coming out of it much faster and more productive coming out of that situation. And that's what I really feel like is the key is momentum does not mean speed. It means movement. And when sometimes I told a client this yesterday, remember that it's sometimes important to go slower or to slow up to go faster. And because of that, we see more opportunities, we have more balance, and we're able to actually stay in the game longer.
You make me think of another question that's not really related to your TEDx, but I think it is in a way. When you said we need to slow up, does that include the need to rest? I mean, like we were teasing. I was teasing you before the start because I'm this ideal of today is Friday for us, but so what? We own our own business. There is no such thing as a weekend.
No.
But should there be?
Yeah, and yes, one of the things that I created through my career, it's because the teaching and the speaking and the training that I do all comes out of my experience. So it's more of a proprietary, it's common subject, but it's through my vision of what I've actually created. And one of the things I did is I created a time management system, and it's one that overlays anything that someone is now using in a form, Day Runner, Franklin, whatever. But I created 5 categories: productive time, indirectly productive time, non productive time, other people's time, delegated time, and time off. If we don't actually, and people say, well, I took a day or I took an afternoon and that's my time off. I go, no, no, no. Time off is where you disconnect. And when we disconnect, we're really doing the old adage again of sharpening the saw. If we can power through, uh, but what will happen at some point, we will run out of gas and we're not going to be as productive, or at least we might be able to get the productive element into it, but it could take us twice as long as we don't, if we don't. But yes, taking total time off and to be able to be creative, to relax, to enjoy what we say that we're doing, to, what is the reward for us? And whether it be family or travel or just be able to smell the roses, or I love sitting by the ocean. So anytime I get to have a additional time there, it's really something that rejuvenates me. But no, the time off is something that we have a tendency not to think of as valuable, and we just push through. And dealing with my international clients, they think we as Americans are really crazy because we don't take time off. We're too wrapped up in the production side of it, and they just don't understand it. And I think we need to adopt more of that from what they have, because they're living a fulfilled life as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a full life. It's full life. Just a teasing note for you. I know you can't see the ocean from Denver or from Colorado, so but that's okay. Just a teasing note. Now, but something though seems, you can clear this up for me. It seems a little bit in conflict though. You say the power of yes. You talked about the power of yes. But if we're leaning toward the power of yes, saying yes, and being in a yes frame of mind, where does the rest come in?
That's a great question, because there is another element that I put to that. And the more we're seeing, the more that other people see us as possible solutions for them. We get opportunities to speak, to write, to do all these different things. This is the question that I teach to ask ourselves when we get those opportunities. And that is, does this opportunity take me towards or away from my ultimate vision? The key point there is you got to know your ultimate vision.
So I want to ask this, because does this take me toward my vision or away from my vision? That is a right downable point. Does this project or this request take me toward my vision or away from my vision? I needed to highlight that. That's really powerful.
Well, what it also does, normally what we do is in the old systems of, I have this opportunity, we say, is it good or bad, right or wrong? And when we say, does it serve, does it fit? And that's all we're really saying. Does this opportunity fit right now? And it's not as always. In fact, an example of that, I just turned down a 6-day speaking opportunity in Puerto Rico, or not, in Costa Rica. And it was going to give me a 5-figure fee to do that, but it didn't fit. And so I was able to connect that organization with 2 other speakers and to be able to fulfill what they're wanting, but it wasn't going to fit for me right now. And even though the carrots were there. It goes back to what you were saying, though. It's that time off. You put that into the equation and have that elevated in high value and low value, because sometimes that could be a high value because it's productive, but it'd be a low value for me because of the circumstances around it.
When you were in your TED Talk, you were talking about a book that you're so kind enough to send it to me. Let me see if I can get it up on the screen here. You were kind enough to send that book, and I sat down. It was a great read. But
Thank
I
you.
want to ask you, and we talked about it in pre-show, so it's not a surprise. But I want to ask you, TED first, then that, or the book, then TED?
I call myself the accidental on purpose TEDx speaker because the book came first. And back to that concept of the power of yes, through a set of circumstances, I worked it backwards, re engineered it
Mm,
from 10 years prior of why and how TEDx happened. But because the book came out, one of somebody that I knew on the East Coast had given that book to the producer of the TEDx program, and they called me. I never applied. I knew about it. I enjoyed watching and still do enjoy watching TED Talks and TEDx's. And but it was not on my quote agenda. It wasn't on my wish list. It wasn't. And I got a call and said, "Would you be one of our celebrity speakers? I'm doing this TEDx." And I go, "Okay, how did you know about me?" And he said, "I read your book."
yeah,
And
yeah.
so the book stimulated the connection.
Let me ask you a little bit about the book while we're there. And I wrote the question down, but I don't remember exactly what chapter it came in on. Here's the statement. You suggest making a list of why you should move on. So I'm not sure. I think this is either chapter 4 or chapter 5 where you made that statement. Make a list, especially when you get down or things you face some adversity, things are not going your way. Make a list of why you should move on. Tell us the benefit and the value of that.
When we're going through whatever it is we're going through, and it can even be a positive thing. One of my questions I ask clients all the time is, when does it feel bad to feel good? Because sometimes feeling good is so abnormal for you, it can actually feel bad and guilty. But I use the analogy of a storm. If we focus on being in the storm, then we can get locked down into the storm. It could just be a self-fulfilling type of prophecy.
Right,
When
right.
we look and say everything has an end, and we can look beyond the storm, what is it that is the production, or the what will it give me potentially? My oldest son is a chiropractor, and there's a new weight program that they have had a lot of success with, and he was really badgering me to do it. And finally, I acquiesced. I'm actually in it right now. And getting it started was painful. I mean, any time we have
Yeah,
change is
yeah.
painful.
It's painful. Yeah.
And but right now, I'm almost 12 pounds lighter than I was 2 weeks ago. And so
Wow.
we started looking beyond. What does it produce for us? With the story behind the book, it was, I didn't want to the reality of what the doctors were saying. I wasn't going to be able to see my kids grow up. I wasn't going to be able to participate with my grandchildren. And so I went and I did one of the things that people thought I was really weird. I created my 100th birthday party. And then I worked my way back and said,
Wow.
okay, I want to see my kids grow up, get married, play with my grandkids, and I do. And so the thing is that if we don't make our future real, that future has no focus and no pull towards us. And so,
Okay, that really cleans that up.
if we think about like affirmations too, affirmations, I think I have a challenge around affirmations because literally most of the time we're telling ourselves a lie. We say, I'm rich, I'm whatever it is. And then you're looking at bank and it's not there.
It's
And
not
so we
there.
have
Yeah.
this disconnect. But if we go into the future and make it so real, so you can see it, taste it, and feel it, then what we're doing is actually being pulled to that new reality, whether or not there is, and it's not a reality, there are no guarantees. But what happens is that we can adjust
Mm-hmm.
the trip. And so, yeah, it's that blending and molding of what that future looks like. But most people, they really look, it's like that old ship without a rudder. Whatever they feel lucky or happened, instead of saying, this is what I want, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to achieve, and then put things in place to have happen.
That does start to make sense there. And I've kind of understood that, but here's my question challenge with that statement. When you're looking at making a list of why you should move on, people in your line of work, my line of work, speakers, coaches, they kind of can move from the negative to the positive easier than 90% of the world. Usually, I think a lot of folks get stuck saying, why should I move on? Move on from what? They're stuck on the negative. How do you coach out of that?
Well, you really hit on an important point, because if you were to speak to a person that's visually impaired, maybe totally blind, and you say, okay, describe for me, and they've been blind from birth, describe for me an elephant. Do you want an elephant? And they would have no idea what that is. So when we say you could have a better life, if they've never had that better life, then what is it that, what does that look like? They have no idea.
Right.
You know, for me, it's allowing them to have a taste, to give them, like, one of the premises in business, or really in any relationship, what people are really trusting in buying from you is borrowed belief. What is it that you have that you're saying, and they are borrowing your belief in those words, in those, however way that you're communicating. And then as they experience it, then that belief transfers over to them. But it's through the experience. And I think sometimes we take and expect people to go faster than they're able to, and they just bomb out, because society has told them to shut up, sit down, stay in line, be in your box. Your lot in life is just what it is. Be satisfied. Whatever, programs are out there, take advantage of them. And instead of saying, what is it that you do want? Have a voice. It's okay to ask, and to have abundance in your life, whatever that may be. And abundance, and I know you know this, it's not just about money. It's about quality of life. It's a balancing act.
It truly is. It truly is. So, and that's a good way to start maybe looking at it. Have people, instead of, well, I don't want to say that. Maybe I want to say have people become aware of the internal victory, the internal, how they want to feel moving on. Kind of like, the Aladdin factor kind of, to me, kind of laid that out a little bit to say, okay, ask for what you really want.
The strangest thing that I really started doing, and it was by accident. It's a happy accident. I don't really think there are accidents, but years ago, I was working with a client, and I said, you know what? I just want to give you permission. And I don't even remember what it was around. And they looked at me and they go, really? I don't believe I need to give them permission, but many people need that permission in order to step out. And once they do, they start realizing there's a whole brand new world out there, that it's totally optional what they choose and how they choose it and when they choose it. And that, to me, is part of the message for all of us as we're working through this, is the empowerment. Is that you truly can take your power back there's a difference between empowerment and control. People tell me all the time, I want to be in control. And I ask them, well, do you ski? They go, absolutely. I go, is that an in control or out of control activity? They go, in control. I go, well, so if a snowboarder comes, in your path, coming down a black diamond, can you stop before you hit them? They go, no. I go, so you're out of control. And they go, uh-oh. It really is that. So what we control is our reaction to whatever the stimulus is. And when that, to me, is empowerment, I have the choice of what I'm going to do with the stimulus and be able to take the best course of action at that moment, as I'm aware of with the information that I have.
See, that's really powerful, and we can look at several different places, including how the beaver saved my life for that type of issue. When you're talking about controlling, you couldn't control your diagnosis. But what I found interesting is that, and you talked about it, adversity doesn't define you.
Another thing that I say is reality is overrated. I could not control, at that moment, I had lost all feelings from the neck down, lost the ability to walk, the ability to write. That was reality. Another reality was the belief of the doctors saying I would be dead or in a wheelchair within 10 years. But what I was in control of is my attitude towards that and my choices of what I was going to do without a guarantee of a positive result. I knew I had a choice though, and that is what I truly believe. Plus, here's another thing: I never owned the diagnosis. And
Okay.
so when we own, I'm broke, I'm poor. What's the difference between broke and poor? Poor is a state of mind. Broke is a point in time. And so what is it that we can see it? So now what are we going to do with it? I was
Mm.
watching a little clip of Damon John a couple of days ago from Shark Tank.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the question was, did you always, does it take money to be in your place and was it luck? He goes, heck no, I had $40 in my pocket and that was all I had selling those ties or whatever it was on Fifth Avenue, in New York City. He says, I was, on the ghetto side, it didn't matter where I came from. I just knew that I had the ability to change my environment and I chose to do it.
Mm. So he basically saying, and you're basically saying that no matter what the environment was, your responsibility is yours to change it. That's you're the person. So even when things go wrong, and they're going to go wrong because I don't want to say that because sometimes you don't know whether something's good or bad because usually most bad things turn good 10, 20 years later.
Yeah.
Or they have a good purpose. So you're basically saying you have to control that to make that happen. You control your actions to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think what I had said is a couple of minutes ago, what we have to let go of is the guarantee. We want to know that I push button A, it's going to give me result C. Well, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't give us a result at all. Other times it'll give us D, E, F. And it's just a matter of, okay, what is it? Is it what I really wanted anyway? You look at some of the products we use, like Post-it notes. Post-it notes was a mistake, and
Yes.
it's the number one 3M product that they have
Right.
for the entire company. So the mistakes sometimes are the things that actually are what we needed and will serve us the best.
Yeah.
We don't know. It's just like
Yeah.
being on programs. My prayer that I pray before every single time that I share is, let me touch one. I'm never going to get the entire audience, but there's some person that needs to hear some part of what I have to offer. And it's not about me. I'm the subject, but I'm not the message. And because of that, I can be the conduit.
You brought up something that's related to TEDx, but it wasn't really on my agenda, but it is now because you brought it up. Um, you said you have this mantra, this prayer that you use before you start, and that's let me touch one. I want to clean that up just a little bit because I want people to understand that's yours. Okay, they can share it, but we do have people who are listening to this trying to figure out how do I get on TEDx. Okay, well, first thing you got to have a mantra like that. Would you a vision? Would you agree?
Yes.
How would you coach me into doing something like that?
An analogy that is totally away from TEDx, but you've probably have met couples that have wanted to have a child, and they do all the things. They go through the medical, whatever they do, they cannot get pregnant, so they adopt, and then within the next few months, they get pregnant.
Right.
It's taken the pressure off. To me, and a number of the TEDx speakers that I know, it's that it was not on our agenda. We weren't manipulating it to, now if you're applying and whatever, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying that if you take the adage of being seen, there's three processes that I teach around for success, and it's be seen. You can't be the best kept secret. So I never worry about how many people are going to be on a particular program, whether it be like when I've done 8 shows on PBS. I've been on all the major networks and all that stuff, but I don't know who's there. But to be willing to be seen and the opportunities come out of that, like you reached out to me to share on your program here. And so it's not about ego. It's just truly about, do you have a message? Do you have a message that is relatable? And when the right combination comes up, you will get those invitations. But the second thing is to be safe. And to be safe is having no agenda. when we connected, and anybody that I connect with, I don't have an agenda to convert them into X. It's truly about
Mm.
getting to know them, about how I can serve them, how can I promote them. It's a
Yes.
symbiotic relationship. So it's not a sale. And then the third is relevant. And that doesn't mean that just that you have something that people need, but also do they desire it? And that's also why I didn't make the book or the TEDx talk around the subject of what I was going through. I wove it into the overall concept of adversity. So they could take the principles of what I was dealing with and translate it into their life, whether it be financial, relationships,
Mm.
business, whatever. It really didn't matter. My purpose is to make it a tool and a benefit to as many people as I possibly could.
It's the purpose, that's the why, that's the vision. And I think all three of those points that you make, that's very important for anybody who's even halfway thinking about a TEDx. I mean, there's leaders out there who want to, hey, I got something I want to share, might help. And they're kind of don't know how to do it. But that all three of those. And you don't need a best-selling book, by the way, like you had before you get it.
Yeah, no, you don't. And it's really about, I was dealing with a high profile individual in the arts and TV in Australia yesterday. And we were talking about the word authenticity.
Mm.
And because he does a lot of training with speakers, and everybody says, well, just gotta get on stage and be you, be authentic. And he says, well, what does that really mean? And to me, it's taking the agenda out and it is being you, but not having a result after the process. And if people think that getting on TEDx is going to catapult them into a much bigger arena, it's probably the wrong reason, because they're using
Who wants to
TEDx
get on?
as a
Yeah.
stepping stone to their agenda, instead of saying, I want to contribute to the community of the TEDx, group. And to me, that was more important for me. And I had to adjust, because the other side is, we talked about the launch and adjust and does it fit. When they asked me to do the TEDx, I said yes. But then I found out it was going to be on the same weekend as one of my 3-day events. And I had people coming in from all over the country and actually internationally. And I said, I have a responsibility to these people. Can I do it the next time you do it? And he goes, well, yes, but it's a year from now. And I go, okay, the power of yes. How do I make it work? And we did some adjustments to be able to have both happen and serve both communities at the same time.
That had to be a stress-filled day, maybe?
Yeah, just a tiny bit. Well,
Yeah.
particularly, the other thing is sometimes you have TEDx experiences that totally go without hitches. This one wasn't that way.
You're right.
They gave me a clicker. We were in an arena facing 5,000 seats, and they gave me a clicker that did not work. There was no countdown clock. I mean, in TEDx, as everybody knows, you have a specific amount of time.
Yeah.
And they had prepared us for 17 minutes. And then at the event, they said, oh, by the way, we've cut it down to 14. This is another reason that I always really emphasize with people: speak on things in what I call your core. If you stay in your core person, your core information, your core experience, you can expand or contract on the fly. And some of the people that day were having a really hard time doing that. But it truly was one of my most difficult speeches, because I had to do my entire story and everything in 14 minutes. But something else, it just occurred to me. I have never wanted to do a speech or a talk, because I'm actually next weekend, I'm doing an organization bringing me in to do a keynote on this as well. Is that I never just wanted to be an empowering or an amusing or that was a good talk. I want to be able to leave them with tools and tips of what they could do with that as they leave, if they so choose. So I just don't want to be a talking head. I want to be a facilitator to change the people that are ready to adapt and adopt anything that I might have to say that's relevant to them right now in the room.
Well, you brought that up during your TED talk because you kind of this you are the subject, not the message.
I am the subject, not the message.
Tell us a
You
little
know,
bit about that.
well, when we think about being a speaker, when we're up on stage, some people take it as an ego trip and instead of a privilege. Uh, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but a lot of speakers, and I say this at my events, is that the stage is holy ground because you can literally change lives, but you can also destroy lives. And you've been endorsed and had that
Mm,
ability through that invitation to be able to be on that stage. It's not a right, it's truly a privilege. And we don't know who we're affecting. And when, as I was leaving, because I had to come back to my event, I was coming back through the tunnel. And, I was wrapped up and I was shifting gears back to my event. But there was an older gentleman that was working at the arena. And I could see him across the lobby. And he saw me coming down the tunnel and he came over to me and he took my hands. And he said, Gary, I have heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of speakers over the years that I've worked here. He says, you changed my life today. That to
wonderful.
me was everything. I mean, it's truly to facilitate that into another human being. And I have no idea what that was. It's just like at that moment, I knew at least that was the one. And he wasn't
Mhm.
even a quote attendee. He was working in the arena.
Yeah, see, that's so powerful. And when I'm listening to your TED talk and reading through the book, it dawns on me that that does not really apply only to speakers. That applies to humans.
It really is. We don't. One of the, and this is relates more to the book. A number of years ago, I was on my way to the East Coast to work with a client. I get to the airport, and the flight that I was supposed to be on was canceled or delayed. I was going to miss my connection to meet up with another person to head where we were going. And so I called my agent and said, this is what happened. What do we do? And she said, well, go here. It turned out the next gate was going to a different city, but it would get me into Boca Raton at the same time. And so I go over there. They had already loaded the plane.
Mm.
And so here's an adversity. I show up. I'm totally expecting certain things. I go to the gate and they say, we're already loaded. There's nothing we can do. And I said, so my concierge agent was in my ear and she says, say this. And I kept saying this and the gate agent kept pounding away and she was getting frustrated. But every time I asked something, I smiled because I didn't have an agenda. I wasn't one of those people that was bouncing. I got to get there, whatever. No, I was there. I was in the moment. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
courteous.
yeah.
And finally, another agent came over, typed a couple of, she goes, here it is, get on the plane. And so I get on the plane. It was a stretch. And so there was two exit rows in the middle. And as I come by, the steward, who had turned out had been a flight attendant for 30 years, he says, is that your seat? I go, no, I'm in the back somewhere. He says, no, that's your seat. It was an aisle seat on an exit row. And there was nobody in between me and the guy in the window. So I'm on the wrong airplane in the wrong seat
Going to the
going
wrong
to the
city.
wrong city. And so, you start thinking about, all this stuff. And so they close up, we push back. I had some books, and it was the Beaver book. And I had some people I needed to autograph and, put the little saying in. And so I was writing them out and I was putting them in the open seat next to me and just kind of stacking there. A flight attendant comes by and she goes, oh, I just love animal stories.
Oh,
And then she looks, she goes, that's you. I go, yeah. And this is one of the rules if you're an author, always take extra copies. And I said, can I offer you a book? Would you like a copy? And she goes, oh, that's great. I said, what's your name? And got it down. So I autographed one for her. She comes back, with the card and she goes, I hand her the book. She takes the book and goes, oh, no one's ever given me a book before. And I'm going, okay,
wow.
Sheltered Life, it's a book. She goes, can I have free drinks for the rest of the flight? I go, well, I don't drink. I wanted to give it to the guy next to me. He didn't drink. She hands me a pile of nuts and cookies. And she goes,
So
how about
appreciative.
food?
Yeah,
Can I feed you? I go, no, I'm
yeah.
really good. She throw the sandwich in my lap. She goes,
Yeah.
whatever you want, it's great. So she goes on back, and they get finished with the food service. And then it's a fairly long flight, and about an hour goes by, and we don't see another flight attendant. I mean, the people are not coming through, checking on us, or nothing.
Yeah.
And so we land in the city, and I get to go up, stand up, and the steward that had been with the airline a long time, and he looks at me, he goes, "You are impressive." I go, "What are you talking about?" He says, "We've been in the back of the plane reading
Reading the
your
book.
book."
Oh no.
And so I get off the plane. I and my next gate for my connecting flight is right there. So the flight that I was supposed to be on, it was the next gate. Get off the flight, the next gate. I knew the flight attendant that I had gifted the book to. That was her home port, and so I was just standing there. She comes off the airplane. She sees me, runs up to me, puts her arms around me, and says, "You don't know how much I needed this today because of what I'm going through."
All because you are the subject, you're not the message. All
Right.
because you had decided I'm giving first.
And allowing the nudge to take me where the nudge was supposed to take me. See,
And not
my
the ego.
agenda was getting to this client. Well, and just allowing it to, so I got there, but there was somebody else I was supposed to impact. I have a picture of her, but I don't remember her name now. We have never spoken since. It doesn't matter. It's not about that.
It is not about the fame or anything like that. What it's about is making that difference. If it's just one person at a time, if you're fortunate to make the difference for 1,000 people, or 10,000 people, but who cares? Did I bring the subject to help? Did I bring the subject to help? Your TED Talk, I mean, it's in two parts, and I had the URL up there. I'll put it back up in a minute. But after you completed that was a lot of work. I know, because you take some of your stuff down into 14 minutes, despite the fact that you're flexible and you've been at it long enough where you can make that adjustment, and it's in your heart. It's tough to do. I know that's tough to do.
Yeah.
So,
It's really funny too, because when I was invited to do the TED Talk, it was 30 days before the event. Most people have 6 months or thereabouts to lead up to the event. And his attitude was, well, you're a professional, you'll figure it out.
yeah. Or,
thank you for the confidence.
yeah. Or most people like me will wait until it's a month before to start working on it.
Well, I am one of those speakers that I really don't do a lot of rehearsal. It's not canned. I feel we talk about the nudge, and the nudges at times will be, I have a particular story maybe that fits into that talk, but I'll get that nudge. There's another story, and I'll honor that nudge and tell that story. And inevitably, that's the story that people come up and comment on. And so that's where we're the conduit. And you're right. It's not being a celebrity. In fact, I talk about myself as being the kid next door, because I want to be like that Mikey. If Gary can do it, I can do it. That's the message I want them to be able to take, is that I'm no better than they are. I put my shoes and pants on just like everybody else. And yes, I've had some successes, but that doesn't mean that they cannot have the same successes. And they're worthy. They have this, the most devastating message mindset, I think, that I've really have identified pretty much in North America, but it is in the world, is I don't deserve. And once we take the foot off the brake on that, it's saying, yes, you do deserve. Because, this is one of those other questions. I love asking questions. I'm a Socratic type of guy. And is it better to give or to receive? And 99% of the time, people say, well, it's much better to give. And I follow up with a second question. How do you give without first receiving? And they go, oh, golly, it's all backwards. And so it's about the understanding that abundance is about an ebb and flow. It's not about, hoarding.
Abundance is about circulating. I see it with ebb and flow, circulating. It's circulating. It's not about stopping the circulation. I totally can relate to that, and I think a lot of folks can relate to that on an intellectual basis. I'm not so sure a lot of folks yet can relate to that on a, forgive the word, spiritual basis? Okay.
Well, I think sometimes the focus is on the money and not what the money does. See,
Okay.
when we look at money as being pretty much neutral, I have this illustration on stage. I pull out $100 bill and I go, is this emotional or logical? And usually about a half and half of the room. And I go, well, in reality, it's a piece of paper with ink on it. It's a chameleon. If you treat it logically, it treats you back logically. If you treat it emotionally, it'll treat you back emotionally. It's a piece of paper with ink. And so, but what does that do? It doesn't matter the amount of numbers or what we receive. What does that produce for us? And that goes by what we talked about earlier is why are you doing what you're doing? What's the purpose? What's the end game that you have for yourself? You know, I this is that other side as being a speaker. I'll ask people, well, why are you doing this? And they'll say to help people, to make a difference in the world and all that. I said, wonderful. Now what's in it for you? You told me what's in it for them. They forget to put them inside of the equation.
Yeah. And if they have it, they're kind of afraid to share it because they don't deserve it, the people.
Or they'll be seen as somehow evil or bad just because they want something for themselves personally.
How many times have we as adults, you and me and any other people who do this type of work, seen people who are afraid to ask for something because they would be called selfish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's been an external messaging that has come from a lot of different sources. I mean, you could pinpoint it on just about every source at some point, whether it be political, family, religious. It's better to give than receive, and it's just like, yeah, no, it's about balance and having that symbiotic, that ebb and flow that you've talked about. And if we have that, then we can have a more productive life for everyone. And that's really what it's about. And, and something I wanted to reflect back. You said, even if it's just one person that we have an impact for, what we don't know is that one person may be the next Oprah, maybe the next Ellen, maybe the next, whoever out there that has a much wider voice. And we were just a catalyst, and we were that point in that catalyst, and that's okay.
Yeah, we have no idea of that ripple effect.
Right.
No idea at all. When you did this TEDx talk, you had already, it'd been quite a few years since you got that horribly wrong diagnosis. Okay. Now, I will say it was wrong because it was. Okay. But how did your TEDx talk affect your current work? What you do now? Did it shape it? The talk. I know the book did, but did the talk?
Yeah. What the talk did, I alluded to it a little bit a couple of minutes ago, is that it made me focus down the entire message to 7 minutes. As a speaker, most people think it's harder to give a longer talk than a shorter talk. It's not. It's in reverse. Totally. And so it allowed me to be able to succinctly share the essence of the story without all of the details. And so that particular talk can be, the one I'm going to be doing in a few days is 75 minutes, and they want that talk. Well, I'm not going to have a problem filling up the time, but I wanted to, again, in 7 minutes, do the story, in 7 minutes, be able to give how it could be translated into their life. And so that to me was a gift, is to be, and there was something else. We were talking about that we didn't, you and I don't do a lot of rehearsing. Well, with TED, I did do it a couple of times to a live audience just to, get the rhythm down. And I did it to this one audience to where there was a smattering of ages and sexes, but there was one young lady that was 18, 19 years old. She was a receptionist in the company, and they had asked her in to sit in on it. And part of the story, I said, in the day with my options were like the Pac-Man image where it went in and ate up the bad cancer cells.
Yes.
And got done. Everybody said it was a wonderful talk, everything. And she raised her hand and she goes, I only have one question. What's Pac-Man?
Oh, no.
And I went, oh,
no.
golly. And the TEDx that I did, approximately a third of the audience were college students. And so very close to her age group. And so that ability to identify that. And so I have changed it now. Back in the day, the video game Pac-Man, where the image came in and ate up cancer patients were using. So I added that. So now they have a reference of what that was. So I didn't lose them, because sometimes in a talk, if we use a terminology or something that the audience have no idea, they get stuck there and they don't hear the message.
They don't go past it. They don't.
And so that was another thing that really came out of the TEDx was, really fine tuning the story to where it had an understanding to a broad audience.
So the book came, then the TEDx came, and then the work that you're doing. Tell us about this piece right here. Let me throw that up here. The 40th Breakthrough Business Mastery. It's a 3-day book.
This is it's an evolution. People have asked me, am I a life coach? Am I a business coach? And actually, I'm both. I have a background in theology and psychology, along with 40 years in business. And so I started running out of time. People said, well, how can you give us the information? And so we started doing events, and it's more of that one-to-many. And so this coming July is my 40th event. But what makes this a little bit different from a lot of the programs is, number one, it's all of my personal proprietary reflection of common elements of success. So time management, branding, the showcasing yourself, speaking. But the really unique thing is on the first day, I call it Foundation Day. I believe that 80% of success in anything, it doesn't matter what it is psychological and emotional. And 20% tactical in the strategies and all the things that we do. Most of society in the training areas will reverse that. People are looking for that magic widget, that magic bullet, that pill that is going to give them that oomph, that all of a sudden the sky's open and the money falls out, or whatever it is. And so on day one, we really delved into the why, the something we've touched on a couple of times, and to be able to have these physical connections, that the empowerment is truly within them. Because at the end of the event, a good friend of mine, I bring him in. He's an 8th degree Taekwondo champion, and we do board breaking. And we've never had a participant not do it. And the oldest person we had was an 80-year-old lady. The youngest has been a 10-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's not about breaking the board. It's showing yourself you can do something that most people would say is unusual or abnormal or impossible. And then on the second and third day is the tactical and the techniques, the structure of what I have done to accomplish. And we have people come in that are doctors, we have manufacturing firms, we have startup businesses, so there's no one group that benefits from this. And the 40th one, where I'm looking to celebrate it in a little different way. I do some extra things. But I also made the decision, we used to do these for years. We've been doing them twice a year. We used to do them before that, more times than that. But I'm only going to be doing them once a year now. So the event in July will be the last event until September 2022. And so it's, it's actually something that I love doing. It's a lot of work. You know what it's like to put on or produce events. But every time I do it, I can't wait to the next one. And people come in, they say they come in as a group on Saturday, they have turned into a community, and on Sunday they leave as a family. It's a very hands-on, experiential, not just sitting there taking notes for 3 days.
Well, okay. We missed it in July. We got to wait till September of 2022. How do we get signed up for that?
Go to www.breakthroughbusinessmastery.com, and all of the information is there.
Breakthroughbusinessmastery.com. We'll make sure that's in the show notes for everybody to see that. But www.breakthroughbusinessmastery.com. businessmastery.com.
Yeah.
That's critical for us to get to, I want to be kind of cognizant of your time and make sure I don't overextend you, which I probably already have. But I want to wrap up with two things here real quick. What question should I have asked you that I didn't?
You know, it's an interesting question because I truly believe the questions that are asked are the questions that should be asked. And in the timing, because like what we've really alluded to all the way through our conversation today, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about those that are able to watch this at whatever time, and maybe 10 years from now, that because we know as we put these things out, they never die.
Yes.
And so the question that if there's one that is not asked, it's one that may be for another time. And 100% is always 100%. And I never worry about that. It's really about the connection. And yeah, I've enjoyed the time with you.
I'm going to put your feet to the fire there because the question is asked. What question should I have asked? And the reason why I asked that question is because sometimes as the curator, I look at so many things that I say, okay, I'm not clear on that vision. I want my audience to be clear on the vision. So that's why I asked. Now,
so I feel very comfortable where we are.
Okay.
So the question would be a question back to you. Is there a question you wanted to ask, but you didn't?
The question I wanted to ask, but I didn't, is dealing with your actual illness. We said that it was 1988. And so 1998, the 10 years that had expired. Now we're all the way into 2021. We've had a tough time in COVID. How did you mentally deal with that 10-year period where they said you're going to die?
Well, it was right in the middle of my financial planning career. I had built one of the largest firms in the nation. And it was one of those things that I didn't want my clients to know that the doctors told me I was going to probably die, because if they think you're going to die, they don't want to give you money. And so I really, really put it out of my mind. But again, the visualization of going into my 100th birthday party, since then also, something we started with, the power of yes. So when people were making offers, I've climbed 14,000-foot mountains since then. I did all the things I kept doing the visualization of going beyond the storm. And when I did that, it's very difficult to think bad. Well, it's not difficult, it's impossible to think two thoughts at the same time. You can't focus on the negative and focus on the positive at the same time.
No.
So it goes back to a choice. Okay, it's not like, even today, it's not perfect. I have no feelings in my hands. They're like stone hands. My feet, every so often, well, for the most part, they're numb. I've learned how to balance and walk in such a way to where it's not perfect, but it's enough. And so when we focus on where we want to go, it's looking in the out of the front of the car, not in the rearview mirror. Where I've come from, I need to learn from, but if I focus on it, I'll end up back there. It'll slow me up.
You end up falling out of orbit, and slow you up. My last question for you is not really a question, but it's more of inspire us. Now, how, not who, does this ideal help? Yeah, who does this ideal help?
Virtually everyone. And the quote, one of my books is called The Book of Garyisms. And it wasn't about my ego. My clients and people that heard me speak, they go, you keep saying this. So we finally put it into a book. But one of the statements comes out of why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And it's the question is, are you a participant or are you a spectator? It's your choice. And when we understand we have a choice in that, and if you're wanting to be a spectator, there's nothing wrong with it. But where I was hit in the face with that question was I thought I was a participator and I was actually a spectator. I had designed and created a lifestyle that I was not participating in. I was, doing things to where all of a sudden I made a choice, and all of a sudden stages on different levels started happening. The books started happening, the invitations to do, and it was like, oh. And I ask audiences, what does it take to go from a spectator to a participant? And I look at like football or any sport that's on a field. You have teammates on the sidelines. Are they participants or spectators? So we have a tendency to think that they're participants, but they're not. They're still watching the game just like everyone else in the stands. The only thing it takes is one step across the line that demarks the sidelines to the playing field. And this is where permission comes back in too. The message that I know that you and I both have is we give permission to anyone to get on the playing field. It's their choice.
So that's a powerful, it's your choice. That's powerful. Gary, I cannot begin to tell you how much I appreciate you hanging out with us today. I know we went overtime a little bit. I appreciate that. However, I got to be honest with you. We need one more conversation. So you and I will talk about that offline and see if we can get at least one more conversation with that. Folks, thanks for hanging out.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.